has been one long movement called by different names. Banking, greed, usury and debt, control.
She's getting into some dark stuff, that one.
Going down rabbit holes, are we? The worst part is, I don't know if that was mostly real or if that was all Taffy's creation.
No, that's all real.
That's what he said, that it's everything except putting
Judeo-Christianity. Yeah, he changed he changed it from war on beauty to war on Judeo-Christianity, and I'm just like, man, isn't she a convert from? Isn't she a convert from there?
She looks a little Amish, right?
I mean,
that's not just
she's
me,
an Amish convert, guys. I'm pretty sure. I don't know. Like we're not promoting e-girls or anything. We just found Taffy's always paying attention to what that one's doing. So, you guys should have seen what the initial ending said. Yeah, I did. I said no, Taffy. We are not putting that on our show.
Okay, so she is a Jewish convert.
She's a Jewish
from
convert.
Secular Judaism. It looks like not.
Yeah. I don't think she was like a practicing.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. A couple of things. We're going to talk a little bit about our last show. Did I miss something with Pat Coffin?
Well, now I'm wondering if I missed something with Patrick Coffin.
I see. I don't know. Pat Coffin's he's always into something, that guy. But we're going to talk a little bit about like the last episode, just because it was our most divisive episode we've ever done. And if you read the AI, like the AI summary, it says as much. It's like, this is the most divided episode of Avoiding Babylon that's ever happened. It was either people said, and that was something I needed to hear so bad, that was like, thank you so much for doing that, or people were like, this is the worst monologue I've ever listened to in my life. Nobody addressed anything. So we're gonna get into a little bit of that.
Just a 92.7% like versus dislike. That is I don't know if it's our lowest, but it's close to our lowest. We're almost always 97 or 98%.
So, but it was still 97% liked?
Oh, 92.7.
Oh, so like 10% of the people hit dislike. We don't ever, almost never get dislikes on our video. It's like very rare.
What's funny though is when we do, it is always because of you.
Oh yeah. People either love me or hate me. It's just the way it is. So we'll get into a little bit of that. Before we do have a new sponsor, and one that me and Rob and I were offered. Okay, do you guys want to take money for this, or would you rather the product? And I was like, get us the product, man. Get us the product. So it's shoplobster.com is the new sponsor. They're really just going to do this for Lent. So they sent Rob and I a box of lobster tails a couple of weeks ago, just to let us know.
4-pound box.
4-pound box of lobster tails. I learned how to cook lobster tail. I had never made lobster tail at home, so I learned how to butterfly them. Like, there's a little simple YouTube video you could go look up to learn how to butterfly lobster
and
tail.
Actually, their website has instructions on how to do it.
It's pretty simple. Like,
how to clean them.
Yeah, you just cut the tail open, you pull the tail up through it, and then you want to just marinate them in like in melted butter with maybe like little paprika and cayenne pepper.
Did your mic just go? Are you frozen? You're frozen. Okay, are you back?
Did I disappear? Yeah. So you broil them for a minute. Yeah, I know. I don't know what happened there.
There's seafood.
You broil them. What do you mean? Of course.
Nicotine, liquor, and lobster.
That's it. Listen, so they sent Rob another box because they were like, do you want like, they offered to pay for the sponsorship, and I was like, no, I'd rather more lobster tail. They were so good. I just said, just send us more lobster tail. And they didn't send me mine. They sent Rob his. So I'm going away, and we're gonna be away, and my in-laws are gonna be with us, and we're gonna be away on Friday. And I'm like, we can't go out to eat. We have to cook at home, and we're gonna be in Lake Placid. I'm like, what are we gonna make for dinner Friday? And I'm like, where are my lobster tails? So they're trying to overnight ship them to me.
They are overnighting them. I got a tracking number I'll give you after the show.
All right, good, because I really want to bring those with me. They were so freaking good last time, man. They are. So I go to shoplobster.com, use code AB10 for 10% off. Like, this is one of those, every one of our sponsors are stuff I love. So
Yeah.
it's not hard to pitch them.
So they have live lobster, they have frozen lobster tails, they have frozen chunk lobster, so like the meat out of the claws and knuckles. They have sea scallops, a lot of good stuff. They are the only Catholic Maine lobster company.
Yeah, and they watch the show, and I'm really happy they're on board because who says no lobster for Lent? That's crazy.
First,
you should have lobster on Lent.
At the very least, you could have it. I would think for the Feast of St. Joseph on March 19th.
But you can absolutely have lobster on Lent. You don't live on land. You can have beaver in Lent. What do you mean?
100 years ago, it was definitely considered a penance. Matter of fact, there was a prison riot because the prisoners were forced to eat so much lobster because people hated lobster back then.
Yeah, lobster is now considered a delicacy, but it wasn't always. And I don't know, man. I'm definitely eating it on Fridays. So, yeah, shoplobster.com. We very much like them. They are the only Catholic Maine lobster company that we know of, and they are fans of the show. So if you guys can, go support them. We also have knickknack.com, still with us, knickknack.com. They have nicotine lozenges, which definitely are not smoking cessation devices, even though I use them as a smoking cessation device.
But they definitely do contain nicotine, and nicotine is an addictive chemical,
which is probably
the FDA.
Which is why we're selling them, because we want to sell you guys addictive substances. But they're pretty awesome, man. I really like knickknacks, and we sampled the classic on the last episode, and
live on air,
and they're one of my favorites now. I very much enjoy classic.
Flavorless, they just taste slightly sweet, but they work.
Yeah, it tastes like kind of like a sugary flavor. They're pretty sweet. They're good. So
grapefruit is my favorite.
Yeah, I'm still grapefruit. That's my favorite too. Grapefruit is my favorite. But I like all the citrus flavors. Grapefruit,
lemon
orange,
even was good. It was like lemonade. It wasn't like sour lemon.
Yeah. But definitely grapefruit is definitely my favorite of all of them. So go check out knickknack.com. Use code, what is it? I want to make sure I get it right. AB 25% for your first time buy.
AB 25% for your first time only. Yeah.
So, all right. That's getting our inventory done. Also, we got slammed with another snowstorm over here, man. And it was.
What does this mean? Oh, wow. I didn't realize these guys still do this podcast. What does that mean?
This is like all we do.
When would we have stopped?
This is all we do. We got slammed hard with we got over 2 feet of snow by me, and it was like such a wet, heavy snow, man. I cannot, like, it clogged up my snowblower. I couldn't even use my snowblower. It was like a nightmare. I'm just saying, like, you see all the videos of people just snowed in New York, and Kale's up in Rhode Island. Kale still hasn't shoveled his driveway. His driveway is like a quarter mile long. Like, I don't know what this guy's gonna do. But how have you been doing, Rob? I know your grandmother passed. I started listening to the interview.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I started listening to it. It was really interesting. I got about a half an hour into it, man. That was really awesome that you put that up.
My grandpa's got a pretty strong Minnesotan accent.
I love it. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, she passed away Friday night. We had heard earlier in the day that the hospice people came in that day and said it was gonna be within 2 or 3 days, so no one was surprised by it. She was 93, lived a very long and full life. She got married at 16 to my grandpa.
Oh, wow.
Had the first kid, her oldest, by the time she was 17. And she's died at 93, so she had a good life. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, just that, for the whole reason you said you put it up, even for posterity's sake, but just because, like, when I started listening to it, I was like, man, I wish I had the opportunity to go back and interview my grandparents and like ask them those kinds of questions and just to know their lives. You know, it's
Yeah,
like,
because other than Matt, Maddie and Iggy will both have memories of her, at least a little. None, my grandpa died almost 20 years ago, or probably over 20 years ago now. So they won't remember him, but like it's the only way for them to hear their voice, you know what I mean? So
yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, especially for me, like I knew my great grandfather who was born in 1899 and died in 1996. So he was 99 when he died. Oh no, 96 when he died or something. Yeah, whatever it was. He died
96, 97.
he died in 97. So he was 98 when he died. 98. He was born in 1899, died in 97, I think, something like that. So like I knew my great grandfather, but before him, I don't know where my family tree goes. And it would have been interesting to even get an interview with him or something just to hear what his life was like growing up, Like he came here in 1913, came in on Ellis Island. So yeah, high school dropout, man. So but yeah, if you guys want to check that out, Rob put up an interview from like 23 years ago or something that
2002.
Rob's godmother interviewed Rob's grandparents. So it's a pretty interesting interview. All right, so now to get to the last video and why I went on that rant. So Nick had put his video out, and his video was "The Catholic Church Hurt Me," and I like something in me wanted to talk to Nick, so I called Nick right away and talked with him, and I wanted him to come back on, but then I had like 24 hours to sit and think about all this stuff, and part of me was just like,
you had 8 hours.
No, from when I spoke to him to when he came on the show. I spoke to him right after he put the video out the day before.
Didn't he put it out that morning?
No, I was on my way home from work the day before, and I saw the video, and I called him on my way home from work, and then I said, come on with us tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah, I said, come on with us tomorrow. So so then I had like the whole next day when I was thinking about it, and I'm just like I know people were mad I didn't bring Nick on to talk through the problems with him, and I didn't give him a chance to speak. But so much of what I was going through my head after watching his video, and then just thinking about all of us in the trad movement in general, and I'm just like, the amount of complaining was just weighing on me, and really what I was doing there was not telling, because there's been a whole bunch of articles that came out saying that I was telling Nick, pretend the problems don't exist, bury your head in the sand with Leo. Like, that's not even close.
No, those people obviously didn't actually listen.
Yeah, it was like some of the Sedevacantists, like Chris Jackson saying I told Nick to bury his head in the sand and pretend. He called me Catholic Inc. Call me Catholic Inc. as if I think nothing is happening in Rome, as if I think these problems aren't worth working through. What I was getting at was, I think there's a tendency for some, especially converts, to come in and over intellectualize the faith to make it merely an intellectual exercise. Not that the faith is not rational and that we can't understand it. That's not what I was going for. It's more just, you can over intellectualize the faith, and then you leave an area for mystery and faith out of the equation, where we don't always know exactly what God is doing in time. And we have this, especially when we look back with rose-colored glasses on church history, we have this tendency to look back and think like the church was great through all time, and it's just not the case. And the biggest point I was trying to make is to make sure that we don't mistake keeping up with events that are going on in Rome and listening to podcasts for a spiritual life. Like they're just not a substitute for a spiritual life. And the things that Nick was putting out on his channel, and it's not just Nick. Like I watched Cameron Riker did this the other day too. Cameron Riker put out an apology video, and he's apologizing to the people he was uncharitable to, and he's pouring his heart out on his video, and I'm just like, so much of me is just like, holy cow, man, you guys got to stop acting like this online. You can't be going on and talking about how the church hurt you, and you can't be going on spilling your guts like YouTube is a confessional, and like there are things that you can't do that with, and you have to.
It's funny because like half the people who do this weren't Catholic in 2018 during McCarrick. 90% of them weren't Catholic in 2002 when that all first dropped. Like, come on, new guys, don't come and talk to us about how the church hurt you. It really rings off as a little empty when you are telling it to us cradle Catholics.
And it's like, and I know that wasn't what Nick probably needed to hear. Nick probably did not need to hear, dude, you need to man up. But like one particular thing he complained about was having his church move to a hall. And when I heard that, I was just like, man, and I wasn't like singling him out, because I have done this too. Like I've complained about the things that we have to deal with. Like every one of us every one of the questions Nick posed are legitimate. They're not insignificant. They're not things that don't need to be wrestled with. I wasn't telling people you shouldn't be even handling these questions. None of that. I do think some people have a better temperament for it than others. And I said, like Anthony Stein, Michael Hitchborn, Catholic Esquire, Chris Jackson, these guys all seem to be able to handle this stuff and it doesn't rattle their faith.
Well, I mean, I don't know about Chris Jackson. He's a ascetic, isn't he?
Well, that too, man. Like the thing with Sedevacantism is it's a good theory.
Yeah.
Like, that's how I see it.
I don't even know if it's a good theory. It's a theory.
It's like you can see the things happening, and I have no issue with someone who in their personal belief is like, man, this is to me it seems as if the Pope is an anti-Pope. Like that's fine. But whenever people get dogmatic about this stuff, like I took issue with even the dogmatic Benevacantis. Even when Patrick Coffin was coming on our show and pitching his Benevacantis thing, I'm just like, it's a good theory. It's a good theory. When you get Dr. Mazza talking about what he thinks, it's like, it's a good theory. When you guys get dogmatic about this stuff and people that disagree with you, you just are like, you're an idiot because you don't agree with their position.
It's especially funny when you do that and say that the Pope isn't the Pope because of Benedict, but then you're also very dogmatic about how the SSPX aren't Catholics and they're schismatic. That's interesting.
It is, dude, and even like I had Father Altman. Like Father Altman quote tweeted Chris Jackson's thing about me, and it's like, oh, the blaspheming Novus Ordo Sede has an issue with me? Really?
And here I was told, no,
celebrating.
Altman, okay, we need to make peace with Altman, and then Anthony goes and does this.
Oh, no. I'm gonna celebrate a Novus Ordo where they're playing like folk music. I'm like, are you out of your mind? Are you kidding me, Altman? You are a clown. You're a clown of a man, Altman. Like, I'm not even like, honestly, the things that come out of your mouth, I don't even care what you were really nice when I met you in person, but you're promoting Chris Jackson trashing me. You don't even know what you're talking about. Using the Lord's name in vain in your sermons. Like, get out of here, man. You're a joke. Like all these guys, and this is all I'm saying. Like,
I'm so happy it wasn't me this time, guys.
You guys can look at the Sedevacantis arguments and you can say, wow, this is plausible. This is, they make a lot of good points. Yeah, I had there's the Diamond Brothers are gonna come after me. What's funny is when you get into the Sedevacantis, like this group of Sedevacantis says the Diamond Brothers are heretics, but like,
hey guys, we've talked with Mel Gibson. Like
the thing I'll say I would give the same advice to a Sedevacantist that I was talking about on that show that night, though. Like, if you're a Sedevacantist, you can't make your whole personality what the Novus Ordo sect does. Like,
it's as pathetic as the Eastern, the Ortho Bros, who all they do is talk about Catholicism.
It's just Yes, it's the same thing as like Jay Dyer and Cleave to Antiquity, where their whole thing is just obsessing on the Novus Ordo.
You're basically just the Catholic version of Redeem Zoomer, guys.
It's like all you're doing is actually showing that you do think the Pope is the Pope. Because if you didn't think he was the Pope, you wouldn't care what he was doing. But the fact that you're so obsessed with him, like my issue is not that it's not like I'm blind to what is going on in the Novus Ordo. Like I think the hierarchy, the modern hierarchy, is presenting us a watered down version of Catholicism.
Yeah.
A very watered down version of Catholicism. The fact that they took away all the fasting,
they're passing on Judeo-Catholicism to us.
It seems that way, right? And the like loosening the fasting restrictions, taking out the things out of the mass that have to do with the severity of sin. What they're doing is presenting a Catholicism to you that is so watered down that you do not take the seriousness of sin into account anymore. And to them the only parable that matters is the parable of the Good Samaritan. And the way I have managed to handle this thing that we're going through right now, this crisis, is I have a theological framework that I understand that I've been operating under. And the theological framework I'm operating under is a typological one. It's like, for me, it's not, I'm not going into manuals. I'm not looking at Vatican I and what Vatican I said about the infallibility of the Pope and stuff like that. I'm looking at what the hierarchy in the first century was like when Christ came. And it's like, was Caiaphas a valid high priest? Was Caiaphas a valid high priest?
Actually,
and it is questionable. Right? It is questionable. Like St. John in John's gospel says Caiaphas was high priest that year, which is a little dig at Caiaphas because the high priest is supposed to be high priest for life.
There's a reason why they always had Annas involved, because Annas, which was his father-in-law, right?
Yeah.
Should have still been the high priest because they're high priest for life. But the Romans had made it to where it changed every year.
Yeah. Now you look at what's going on today, and you can see that the deep state has meddled in papal conclave. So I'm not completely against the idea that some of these theories could be true. My position is we are lay people, and it's not our place to make a decision on these things. Like, these things could be possible, but to be dogmatic about them as if you know exactly what's going on, you're insane. None of you know exactly what's going on. And the reason I'm constantly bringing up Romans 9 through 11 is because at the time when Christ came, people thought that God could not fulfill his promises. They thought it was impossible because the 10 northern tribes had been dispersed amongst the nations so much, there was no way to gather them back in. But God did it in a way that was so glorious that nobody could deny it. And that's how I see this whole thing playing out as well. When I see the situation going on in Israel, what I see are men who only have the Old Testament, right? So when they talk about our elder brothers in the faith, when they talk about Judeo-Christianity, when they talk about all this stuff, what they fail to understand is that you're talking about a group of people who have the Old Testament without Christ fulfilling it. So everything they read in the Old Testament, those prophecies still need to be fulfilled. You're talking about the prophecies of Zion specifically that come to King David about his descendant and how his descendant will rule over the nations with an iron rod. That is what they are trying to bring about in Israel. Now, when you look at our own hierarchy, the reason we always talk about this story, because this is actually really important, that the unification of the brothers at the end of the story. We've talked about how the thread through Genesis is the birthright is supposed to go to the older brother, the firstborn, but it always goes to the secondborn. That is the golden thread that runs through Genesis. But Jacob and Esau get reunited. Joseph and his brothers get reunited. Now, when you see our own hierarchy trying to do things like the Abrahamic faith house, they too are like the Sanhedrin, reading the scriptures with a carnal understanding, trying to bring about that unification of the brothers through their own power and not by grafting them into the new covenant the way Christ is going to at the end of time. So you're just seeing The same way the Jews are trying to bring about a fulfillment of the Old Testament that is not fulfilled in Christ, our own faithless hierarchy is doing the exact same thing with human fraternity. And God wills the plurality and diversity of religions. All of these men don't believe. Like, you're dealing with faithless men. This has happened throughout church history. And my point with Nick was basically that every single saint, maybe not everyone, but the majority of the saints were persecuted by the hierarchy. St. Joan of Arc was burned at the stake. Padre Pio was confined to a room.
Joan of Arc it wasn't the hierarchy, it was the English. But continue.
She was persecuted by the hierarchy, though. Was she not?
Not her hierarchy, no.
No? All right, no. Maybe I don't know.
It was one English bishop.
Okay. Either way, most of the saints had to endure some kind of persecution from the hierarchy. And the way I see it now is every one of us are being given that opportunity. It is a grace. It's a grace that every one of us, you see these men hate traditional Catholicism. You see they hate it. They hate even not even traditional Catholicism. They hate Orthodox Novus Ordo Catholicism.
Mm-hmm.
They hate it. They're ripping altar rails out. And my position on this wasn't pretend everything's fine. My position was we need to suffer well during this because things are going to get much worse. And that whole rant I went on was as much for myself as it was for everybody listening. Like, I needed to hear it because I get caught up in complaining and bitching and moaning, and it's not good for any of us. And I thought it might be good to try and light a fire under all of us because we do have some troubling time, and especially during Lent. So when Nick put that video out on Thursday, on Ash Wednesday, I was just like, man, like, this is the first day we're supposed to be suffering well. And it just hit me in a way where I was just thinking about all this stuff. And I'm just like, and the other thing that really hit me was the way some young men are portraying themselves online. It's no wonder they're having a hard time meeting a girl, because no girl wants to meet a guy who wants a mom, who needs a mommy. Right. So the whole idea of what I was talking about with women, and I was like, these, like, a woman is looking for a spiritual father, someone to lead her. It's like, if you're following God, your girl will follow you. If you're following the devil, your girl won't follow you. She'll just go straight to the devil.
And if you're complaining about everything, you just won't have a girl interested.
You just won't have one, because no girl wants a complaining little whiny woman, like, it's just not what they want. And a lot of young men today seem to want a mommy. Suffering with Lobster. All right. Settle down.
What we do here at Avoiding Babylon, we suffer well with lobster, nicotine, and wine.
Yeah, it was the first day of Lent, and that was what really, and the thing is, a lot of what Nick is going through is because of people hurt him. It's not even that the church hurt him. Like, Nick has been hurt by Catholics. And I think especially the Pelican thing that went down, because Nick left Pelican. I don't know if he announced that publicly, but Nick left Pelican. And I think a lot of things that happened.
I don't know if he wanted to sit publicly, but here it is publicly, everyone.
I don't really care. So, I mean, he doesn't have to say why, but I think he was hurt by some of the things that happened over there. And I think it was just one more thing that, like, added to it. And I think he put that video out because he was hurt. Yeah. By other Catholics, and I do think he is struggling to make sense of these things. And I have been for years. Like, all of us have been struggling with this stuff for years, trying to make sense of this. Like, how is it that Christ promised the gates of hell will not prevail, and we're seeing a hierarchy come out and start to put things in the magisterium that seem like they're a little wishy-washy? And I'm like, man, if the Holy Spirit wasn't still protecting the church, when Francis writes Amoris Laetitia, he'd have put the divorce, communion for divorce and remarried front and center. He had to put it in a footnote. He had to put it in a footnote, because I do think the church is still protecting, the Holy Spirit is still protecting the church. If it was up to these men, we would have ordained women deacons by now. But because the Holy Spirit is protecting the church, we have it. There are going to be some things that come down that are going to be right up against right up against that line, and you're going to be like, you can have a lot of people telling you that the church that this is not Catholicism, and it's to a degree they're right. To a degree they're right. Like, it's not like what is being presented to us is not authentic Catholicism. So I am sympathetic to the people who are like, nah, but my advice to the Sedes would be the same thing. Like, go live your Catholic faith out. Like, live a Catholic life. That is all you guys can do during this time. The whole thing with the SSPX, I'm not qualified to have an opinion on what the schism. All I know is the people that go to the SSPX are just trying to live a Catholic life.
Yeah.
And that's all I know. I know the people going to and the thing I loved the most about the SSPX is they don't actually harp on the Novus Ordo that much. Like, they don't nitpick it. They'll release a statement when something big comes out. But for the most part, the SSPX is just trying to preserve the sacraments, give people the Catholic faith, and do their thing. And it's I just think that's what anybody can do in this time. Like, things are so bonkers that you just have to find the parish that you can actually be Catholic in and do what you can to live out your Catholic faith right now. And in the midst of this suffering, just suffer well, guys. Suffer well, because every time you complain, you give up your reward in heaven. And I'm saying that to myself too, because I complain all the time. I mean, all of us do it. So I do feel bad that I didn't let Nick address some of the things I was saying. And I was just on a rant, and it was a very impassioned speech. Some people had the nerve to say that I was bragging about my great life. That is not at all what I was doing.
There were times it definitely came off that way.
It could have come off that way. That was not bragging about my life. It was bragging about the transformation God made in my life when I started living my Catholic faith. It was, and at no point was I trying to brag about my life. I was trying to brag about how transformative God's love has been in my life. And that's something like we hear all the time. It's a conversion story. It's all I was basically telling. It was a conversion story. It's things when I had gotten to a point where I left the sacraments in 2016 after Amoris Laetitia came out, because I was just so defeated. Like, I was so defeated by the things that were happening in the church that I stopped attending the sacraments. And it's amazing how quickly you return to your vomit when that happens, and you just go back to your old ways, and you lose any kind of connection to a spiritual life, and you live a life as though God does not exist. It's not that you stop believing in God. You just pretend he doesn't exist. You're like Adam hiding in the garden. God, don't look at me right now. God, don't look at me right now. And that happened to me. And I saw what my life is like without the sacraments. And I made a decision I don't care how scandalous these men are. I don't care how scandalous what's going on in the Vatican was. And to be honest, like, hearing other men talk about that they were scandalized too was helpful. So, like, I don't agree with the Catholic Answers approach and pretending everything's fine either. I'm not against acknowledging these problems. I'm not against people talking about them. I'm against people who don't have the temperament to handle it talking about them. I think people need to know themselves. And if you see yourself losing faith because you're scandal ridden, then turn that stuff off and just go be Catholic. And don't mistake paying attention to what's happening in Rome for a relationship with God, because it's not one. You want to jump in a little bit, Rob? I want to make sure I give you time to talk tonight. I don't want to be accused of ranting again.
Oh, it's too late for that. Everyone's telling me to mute you already.
And glad you made your point. Sede position is possible. Sede position is not dogmatic. We argue not to bind your conscience, but to enlighten your intellect. And look, like I'm friends with Father Geckel. I don't see him obsessing on the Novus Ordo. I see him actually putting out some like really good spiritual advice to people. And it's like, if he's at his parish level, and he should be just encouraging his parish to be Catholic. Like, he doesn't, I did make blanket statements about Sedevacantists that night, and I don't really care. Like, to me, it's a good theory. It's like, cool. Like, it's possible that John the 23rd was a Freemason and all that stuff. Maybe. But to me, the bigger scandal is that these men are priests of the Most High God. And that's what makes what they're doing so scandalous. And this has happened before. And it's happened multiple times throughout salvation history, especially when you go and read the Old Testament. And when these men do this, they are still priests. Like when a priest is ordained, he is a priest for life. Even when he's laicized, he still has an indelible mark on his soul. So these men that are doing these things, they're still the hierarchy. And in a way, I think even the Sedes do know this, which is why they're constantly worried about what is happening in Rome, because the world sees Leo as the Pope, whether he's an anti-Pope or not, it doesn't matter, because the world sees him as Pope, and what he says matters, because what the bishop in Rome does matters very much. It's not even an apology. I'm not even taking back anything I said. I hope nobody mistakes what I'm trying to give a little explanation for where the impassioned sermon came from, because it was an impassioned sermon, and it was very much from the heart, and it was a lot to do with because of the things that I see online. And like, I do enjoy sitting in and listening to these conversations at times. It's just sometimes it's just the complaining, the nonstop complaining, and I think it's poisonous to a point. And taking a step back from it has been helpful for me, and I just wanted to share that with everybody. It's like, you guys, this is what has worked in my life. I think it can work in your life too. Take a crack at it. And that's where I was going with it.
Sorry, I had to go get bourbon.
Listen, no, I really didn't know what we were going to talk about tonight. I kind of wanted to just get on and talk about this a little bit, just to give a little bit of an explanation. It is Lent, and we've tried to, yeah, I agree, Aaron. This is
sure. That's when he pops in.
Rob is very concerned with his what does Kale call it? Wait, what does Kale call it?
When I post pictures of guns and stuff?
Like when you post your profilicity.
Profilicity.
Your profilicity. Rob loves his bourbon and his cigars, and the Sedes were furious with me, and then
yeah, all five of them.
I get when I start thinking about, because they make it like their argument is so intellectual, and it's like I'm telling, it's not really that intellectual. It's they see contradiction, and I don't see contradiction. I actually see continuity with the story. So they see contradiction, and their brain can't square the circle. But when you think about the logical conclusions to their thesis, it's, especially if they think the ordinations are invalid in the Novus Ordo. Do you understand? Like, and then if they think I'm crazy for being apocalyptic, what they are describing is the most apocalyptic thing imaginable. Because the logical conclusion is that maybe there's 100,000 Sedevacantists worldwide, and they get their orders from Thuk. Like, the priests get their orders from Thuk,
who was like legitimately delusional.
Yeah, he was like
before his death. Like they complain about Novus Ordo ordinations and consecrations, when in reality,
there's questions about Thuk's sanity towards the end of his life.
Ordinations and consecrations are probably way more questionable than the Novus Ordo ones. Let's be honest.
So I do think they're intellectualizing things to a degree that can be harmful. And the conclusion of it is there's 100,000 Sedevacantists worldwide, and maybe there's 30,000 of those who actually are able to attend the sacraments.
No, it's got to be less than that.
Less than that, probably. Like 90% of the people online that are fighting with me, these are people who don't actually attend the sacraments. And for them, the faith is 100% purely an intellectual endeavor. And those are the ones I have the hardest time with. Those are always the ones I have the hardest time with. It's not, a lot of it is because I see how they handle relationship. And let's put it this way. I have a friend who's struggling with something right now, and he's in a relationship with a girl, where they're fornicating, and he's still Catholic, and he'll go to confession for this thing regularly, and it's like he's conflicted about a lot of things. He sees the crisis in the church, he's dealing with that too. And I said to him, I said, look, first off, you can always talk to me about this stuff. Like, I'm not going to judge you. Like, you know, I understand how difficult it is, and also, even if you lost your faith, you could still come to me. Like I care about you as a person. It's not, I don't like you because you agree with me. And when I see people online who will destroy relationships because they disagree with them, I think there's like a spiritual rot there.
It depends on what the disagreement's about. Like, if you have a friend that supports abortion, I'm sorry, you shouldn't have that friend.
Yeah, that's a little different.
You know what I mean? But like, yeah, over stuff like this, yeah.
Like when you're getting into something where somebody's there, you're both claiming to be Catholic, and one person's position is the Pope is not a valid Pope. It's like, we should still be able to sit down and have a conversation. Like, I'm sorry. And if I don't come to your conclusion, because those guys will say, like, I'm curious, do they think people in the Novus Ordo are Catholic? Because they think it's another religion.
But I mean, let's be honest, who cares what they think?
I don't, but
they're 1/10 of 1%.
I'm trying to show how preposterous the conclusions of their thesis come, you know, and it's just too far for me, you know, and to be dogmatic about it the way they are, I don't know, man. And when I see that 90% of the guys going for this are single guys who are
autistic, but yet not in the actual intelligent way, more
like
autistic.
They're just buried in moral manuals and councils and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, man, this is not like, the faith is not a math equation to be solved. It's not a math equation to be solved. God is rational, and we can use our reason, and we should be able to make sense of things. But there's also an element of when salvation plays out. You read the reading from 2 weeks ago, and I brought it up on the last show. When you read the reading from 2 weeks ago, Jesus tells the apostles, the Son of Man will be delivered to the high priests. He will be crucified, and on the third day rise again. And they didn't understand this when he just told them. He just told them, and they didn't understand it. And then when he tells them that this is going to happen, and then it happens, and they still don't get it. Even though he told them ahead of time, I'm going to be handed over, scourged, crucified, and on the third day rise again. They're in the upper room, and they think all hope is lost, and they're like, oh, I guess everything was nonsense. And that's kind of where we are right now, because we saw the church for 2,000 years stood strong in her magisterium, and then 1960 comes around, and we have this council, and things start getting a little dicey. And the thing is, you can take a whiteboard to the council and make everything fit. It's ambiguous, and they've weaponized that ambiguity. But the church has not reversed course on the things that matter in our lives for how to get, like, the church has not made up, like, bound on us something that will affect your salvation. You're not going to be required to think that sodomy is a good ever by the church. They could downplay the severity of sins of the flesh, and they could say, oh, God doesn't care about sins of the flesh. That you won't die. Literally the thing that Satan tells Eve, you won't die. And that's what our hierarchy is telling us right now. Some of them, most of them. And it's very confusing. You look at it and you're like, how can this be? But it's just faithlessness. That's what we're dealing with. Just men who don't believe. And the framework to that this is how I've been able to manage, by seeing the modern hierarchy who clearly, especially when you get into some of them, when they're ripping the altar rails out, or if you get to a guy like Supich and things like that, you're dealing with men who don't really love Christ. Like they don't love the Catholic faith. So faithless men have gotten into positions in the hierarchy. What do? We know the Catholic faith. Just live the Catholic faith. It's all you can do. This is just all we can do. All the stuff I'm seeing with everybody talking about about Israel, and I'm watching everybody saying that Catholics can't be Zionists. And the reason why is because of the reason why is because of everything we've been talking about on this show for the past several months. God has allowed these people to gather back in to this land, and they are trying to bring about a carnal fulfillment of the scriptures. And you're seeing the same thing happen in our own hierarchy. And when you look to the first century, the Sanhedrin colludes with Rome. And right now you're seeing the Sanhedrin colluding with our hierarchy. And you're seeing it's why the Jewish stuff that's all in the conversation right now is so much. They have so much influence over the things that happened in the church too since the council. All of this is connected. So you don't have to actually come to the same conclusions that I do. Because I'm not dogmatic about what I believe either. I could be wrong. But I think that's how everybody kind of has to hold this whole situation loosely right now, because we don't know what God is doing. But we know God has seen how the story plays out. And he made promises, I think, for this very time. We know there's going to be a great apostasy. You go and you look at Our Lady of Akita. What did she say? The only thing you'll have left is the sign left by my son in the rosary. That's all you'll have left. You won't have faithful shepherds to go to. You're not going to have the church to run to. You're going to have the sign of the cross and the rosary. And I'm trying to prepare people for that, because that's where I think we're heading right now. I think we're heading to a time where we may not even have the sacrament. So I don't think we should be complaining that we're in a hole. You know, they took away our pretty cathedral. Yeah, I think we're going to do the, where's Kale? I think we might do that on locals, because we don't really have anything else to do on locals. So we figured we'd play Candace's trailer over on locals.
Oh, yeah. About the only person, but never mind. Ocean say about the only person more dumb than a Sede.
Yeah. Ocean wants us to do a call-in show. We have, all right, so everybody knows Joshua Charles is coming on next Thursday. We're doing a call-in show next Thursday. So next Thursday, if any of you want to do a call-in show, that's the show to catch us on. Andy, I appreciate that. Yeah, look, the reactions to the last video were so divided. People either loved it or hated it. There was no in between. We got more comments on that video than probably any stream we've ever done, I think. Right, Rob? Like, I don't think we've ever gotten that many comments on a video.
I don't think it was all that many, to be honest. Let me see.
Yeah, there was hundreds of comments.
Yeah, we get hundreds of comments on a lot of videos.
Nah, not like that. Let me see. Hold on.
Let's see. There were
only 600. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's a lot. 625 comments on it, and they range from
it was a lot of comments for a live show. The George Janko Voice of Gooning one had 746.
Okay, so it wasn't the most commented, but
and that was a lower liked video too. So that was actually our most controversial video, the George Janko Voice of Gooning one. Guess who was all right about that one, guys? We were.
Yeah, when I did the when I got the summary,
Cardinal Zen Michael Lofton had more comments.
All right, so this is what the summary was. Viewers are deeply divided over the host's extensive monologue approach, which many felt provided a necessary spiritual wake-up call, while others criticized it as a dismissive and one-sided lecture that failed to engage the guest's serious theological concerns. A significant portion of the audience expressed frustration that Anthony dominated the airtime, preventing Nick from speaking and failing to address specific theological and logical questions regarding the church hierarchy. Many viewers praised Anthony's passionate rant as a powerful and much-needed motivational message, calling it an S-tier exhortation to focus on personal sanctity and suffering well amidst church scandal. So it was like, the thing is, I got a ton of people angry with me, but the amount of private messages I got from young men if I read them to you, you wouldn't believe it. Like so many young guys. One guy was like, I stopped going to mass for the past 2 months. He's married. He's like, I can't tell you how different I'm going to approach my marriage now. Like guys going back to the sacraments because they kind of just needed something like that. Look, this stuff gets it gets hard to bear sometimes. And I don't know. I just sometimes when I'm I wasn't trying to lecture anybody. It was more just
well, except you said you were trying to lecture people.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't bringing Nick on to have a conversation. I was bringing Nick on to give him a talking to. And Rob had pointed out, he goes, that like in hindsight, I probably shouldn't have had Nick on in hindsight. Like I really probably should not have had Nick on for that. And I should have done that rant last episode and then maybe had Nick come on this time to try to talk to some of the things, because I do think having a theological framework for this stuff to exist is helpful. It's why I don't black pill. It's
you black pill all the damn time.
Well, you think I black pill because of thinking it's apocalyptic, but that's not a black pill to me. To me, that's actually wow. This is what we're in the midst of seeing prophecy being fulfilled. If you take my perspective on it, it's basically we were told this would happen. And watching it happen, and that many people's faith will be tested throughout this, that's not a black pill. That's actually understanding it and saying, wow, man, God chose me to be alive as this stuff is going down. So that's not a black pill. Thinking we're towards the end of the story is just me reading the signs of the times, I think. And I could be wrong, but I mean, even you agree, if it's not the end, it's a type.
As I've said for years on this show, hundreds of times, why do we keep talking about it?
What would you like to talk about, Rob?
I don't know. We could read our Apple reviews, our podcast reviews.
Yeah, we could do that. But I mean, honestly, I don't like when you do that because you never want to talk about what I want to talk about, but you're also not bringing.
We talk about what you want to talk about every single episode.
Like I said,
we just reviewed reactions to our last episode. You monologued about a monologue.
Floor's yours. Floor's yours.
So, do you want to do the Apple podcast or the podcast reviews now or on locals?
Go ahead.
Okay. Let's see here. So the first one, okay, for those of you who don't know the game here, if it's a game, the idea is to leave the worst review you can in text, but then actually put 5 stars in the review to screw up the algorithm. So this one is called Two Babbling Clowns. This is a rambling, disjointed conversation between two meatheads, one incoherently babbling, constantly interrupting himself with cackling, giggling, while simultaneously becoming interrupted by the other idiot, a glum killjoy. I definitely didn't just do that.
Oh, no. It's a pretty accurate one. I don't know.
A glum killjoy incessantly moaning about how the show is too long and having fits of worry over potential legal liability. All this is overlaid with the hard sell that the real show only happens at the paid locals subscription portion, but once lured into wasting $5 a month, when it would be better to light it on fire than to give it to these morons. The reality quickly sets in that you've been canned and you sink into a deep depression. 5 stars.
5 stars. That's all we want, guys. So the game is you can write the most horrific things about us. Just leave 5 stars because it boosts us in the podcast algorithm. What do you got next? There was a bunch of them. Somebody was not happy with our John Deloney review. That's for sure.
What's funny is the person who left the actual 1-star review has a username a lot like Ocean, actually. So either Ocean didn't understand the game and left a 1-star review on accident, or it's someone else entirely. You want me to read the one that was a legit 1-star?
Was it the Deloney one or is it a different one?
Yeah, it was the Deloney one.
Yeah, you can read that one. This person did not like my Deloney. Did not. This is intentional 1-star, Rob. This is not I know. This is definitely an intentional 1-star.
Disgusting and Vile is the title. Your podcast about Dr. John Deloney. He's a doctor?
Yeah.
That's not good. Dr. John Deloney was so disgusting, full of hate and misinformation. I dare you all to find one video of John explicitly telling someone to divorce that doesn't. Notice how they had to say explicitly, because he implicitly tells everyone. But anyways,
He's not. That's always my point. It's like he doesn't come right out and say get divorced. He basically like gets the woman to think she's in a dangerous situation,
right.
And then goes, "Well, I'll never advocate for divorce." Like
he
that's
he gets them to believe they're abused.
Yeah.
The fact that you guys said he always recommends divorce couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, it's against John's professional ethics. I don't believe he has any. As a trained counselor, he will give you the two paths of leaving or telling someone to give their partner a path back to trust, but that's not recommending divorce. All I know is John does way more good in this world than y'all stupid Southerners, than you all will ever do. And the men and women who actually listen to his podcast and take his advice and apply it to his life will experience life change for the better. I know I have. And another thing is,
this person must have just seen the clip. Like that can't be somebody that watches our show.
No, I'm sure they just looked John Deloney and
they probably yeah. Like our thing came up.
Another thing is all your hate watching does is keeps getting him paid. So at least that's a bonus. Actually, no, because we're not sending people like links to him. It's getting us paid, not him. But they left an actual 1-star review.
Yeah, that's not the game, guys. Don't do it that way.
Do it like this. So this is okay. If you are looking for a low rent Catholic Answers knockoff, AB is the podcast for you. They have it all. The place where Trent Horn's straw man arguments meet daily funding drives. Their massive posts are second to none. These are just your average Catholic guys calling for an end to abortion after all. If you hit subscribe on your wife's phone, you don't have to get her any more Christmas presents this year. So what are you waiting for? 5 stars.
Wait, you read the nicotine addicted one?
Not yet.
Go to that one. That one's great.
This one just says transformative. Might turn you into a nicotine addicted wine chugging e-girl who endlessly prattles on about the Amish. 5 stars. Did I read the Tony and Bob one?
Yeah, you have to. You got to read them all.
I'm wondering if I already did. I don't think I did. Okay, so this one just says Tony and Bob. Not quite sure who thought it would be a good idea to give a Midwestern gun nut and Long Island ethnic a microphone and a place to spread their ideas. They're worse about secrets than Milo and constantly skip doing their local shows that we pay our hard-earned money for. At least his boat is now fixed. 5 stars.
You guys are sick.
A deal you can't refuse is the next one. My brother initially sent me this podcast and I couldn't stand it. Tons of inside baseball, and if you aren't addicted to X, it's easy to get lost. 2 years later, it's the only podcast I watch every episode on. I got conned into spending $10,000 for my wife, and I had a honeymoon with these goons in Italy. I've watched every I've watched every documentary on the quote unquote real history of World War II, and I'm convinced there's no salvation outside of the lads and mass.
Oh, that is awesome. I'll see you in Italy, brother.
That's all we haven't read yet. Yeah, we are pretty bad about secrets.
I got a doozy of a secret that I can't tell you, and I'm waiting for Pantile to give me permission.
You can't even tell me?
I can tell you off air, but
okay, hold on. We'll turn off the broadcast.
No, we'll do it on the switch.
We'll pause the broadcast. Okay, it's paused. Tell me.
Yeah, I'll tell you off air, but this is a doozy. That if I get permission to spill, oh man,
something good for Mike.
Oh, we're gonna destroy Catholic Inc.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't until if he doesn't give me permission, I can't. But
wait,
Aaron Gordon sent me his title. It says, I might convert. Everything this podcast lacks in coherence. It makes for an unprofessionalism. Honestly, these Catholics made me a Protestant want to convert to Judaism. 5 stars. That was great, Aaron. That was a perfect 5-star review.
For those of you who don't know,
for the record, the reason we do talk about this subject so frequently is because I do think when especially when we do go through the whole story, then it's like you have to hear something 3 or 4 times before you can present it, yourself. So I do think people like hearing things repeatedly because then they could take those arguments and explain them better. I mean, and it's also, Rob, like you and I have talked about this topic in a way no other show has.
I know.
I know you're doing your bit, but
well, that, and for those of you who like, maybe this is your first or second show of ours, if I look incredibly bored during it, it's only because like you might be hearing this from Ann for the first time. This is my 30th time.
Yeah, at least.
So it's not that it's not an important subject or that I actually don't want Ann to talk, or I'm just bad at not like hiding boredom. Sorry.
The way we've talked, because especially when the subject comes up again, which it does frequently now, and I just watched Tim Gordon do a show on it. I watched Brian Holsworth do a show on it, and people are checking those shows out because they want to understand this topic. And the way we've approached it is very different from the way any other show has approached it, which doesn't get into the conspiracy stuff, doesn't get into like I watched Tim Gordon do his show the other day, and he went through all what the church fathers talked about, which is awesome, right? I watched Holdsworth go through it, and Holdsworth was talking about the enmity between Jews and Christians and how that all plays out. But the thing that is rarely spoken about is the fact that to even talk about Zionism, you can't separate it from the fact that you're talking about people who don't have Christ fulfilling the promises of the old covenant, trying to bring about the fulfillment in their own carnal way, in a diabolical reading of the scriptures and in a carnal way. And especially when you see what's happening with our own hierarchy, that is like the interpretive key to me. And just, I'm watching the same thing happen in our own hierarchy that happened in the hierarchy of Christ's time. And you have to imagine like the Jews who are living in the time of Christ being told by their hierarchy that this man is a false Messiah, and Christ coming along and presenting a totally different thing to them. And these people thinking, well, if I just have to follow the hierarchy. I have to follow the hierarchy because they're the ones that, how could they miss it? And it just seems to be the way that's happening. So,
okay, for the record, we're not talking about the Pennsylvania Dutch sort of Amish, right?
Funny, because that term is what we used to use on this show.
Yeah, now we don't need to anymore. We can just say the Jews.
You can say the Jews now, but when we first started talking about this topic, it was so hard to talk about that you had to say the Amish, and a lot of new listeners that watch the show don't even get the reference anymore.
Mm-hmm. It is crazy. One, that it's been like 4 years, and two, that it's changed so much.
Rob, the first time we talked about it was the wallet joke.
Yeah, I know.
The first time we even started talking about this was we started making jokes about. I said, if you want to see something like, I'll be working in a Jewish neighborhood and you'll see like a group of Jewish people walking like Hasidics, and I'll just yell out the truck window, "Sir, you dropped your wallet," and you'll see them all just looking around like this. But that was like the first Jewish joke we made, and then we talked about we were talking about how the Mustache Man's uniforms were made by Hugo Boss, and they're very
sharp,
stylish, and
very sharp.
Very sharp uniforms. That was how we started broaching the subject. And then we really started talking about it when probably about a year and a half ago. And behind the scenes, we had been talking about it a lot. And the things that we've learned, we've kind of learned in real time, and we're bringing them to the show as we learn them. So, it's, sadly for those of you who watch every single episode, you're going to hear me repeat myself, but there's a lot of people that are checking something out for the first time, and they're learning a new way to understand the subject. And most people don't watch every single episode.
And those of you who do, I would say you need a therapist, but just don't call John Deloney.
Don't call John Deloney. Call into our call-in show next week.
That's going to be interesting.
But yeah, this isn't another co-sleeping incident.
We're doing it on both Eternal Christendom and our channel, right?
Yeah, we're going to simulcast it.
It's going to be interesting to see if we should play a game. If we can guess if that whoever is currently calling in, if they tend to watch more Avoiding Babylon or more eternal Christendom, and see if we can guess based on the audience.
It's gonna be all our audience. It's gonna be
Someone's gonna show up in like a shirt and tie, and it's gonna be like, oh, that's Josh's audience. And then you'll get a half kid and a wife beater. It's like, oh, that's us.
He's like, should we promote it ahead of time so people know, so that we make sure we have people calling in? I'm like, Josh, the last time we did this, we had more people than we knew what to do with, and we only gave it to our local subs. We didn't even open it up to YouTube.
It's gonna be crazy, actually.
Like, there's 700 people watching right now. There's 700 people watching right now. It's going to be nonstop questions coming in. So all right, we're gonna head over to locals, and yeah, we'll review Candace's Erica Kirk trailer, and I'll try to drop some hints about the stuff I know, but I can't actually outright say it.
Come on, we all know you will have told everyone in locals by the end of the show.
I'm not going to come outright and say it, but let's just say,
yeah, because you definitely didn't tell everyone Ripperger was going to be on Carlson.
Yeah, but that
you promised you wouldn't tell people.
We can screen the calls, Cal. Like, we can see, like, they have to put their face and stuff up, and yeah, like we'll be all right. We kind of know what we're doing, because they have to. It's not like they just pop on automatically. We could see who they are underneath and stuff. So
the downside is we're gonna head over all the. It won't even matter that we blocked all the settings.
Yeah, I don't spill the tea on YouTube. I said it on locals, and I said it after Rob left too. I'm gonna get hot and bothered if you see a face. I might make a rule that you have to show your face, because I don't want Tommy or Sedevacantism or those guys coming in. So, all right.
Hard to stop.
All right, we are gonna head over to locals, and I sent a few things to Rob over on Telegram that we'll get into over there.
Well, what do we want to play as an outro here?